ahead and do it. We're going to start with that.
And
I like this. I'm not touching anything.
Technically, the producer should read that stuff, right?
I think so, yeah.
I can give it a go if you want. Take us back to our
Would you like to?
You did it so well, though. That's the thing.
Boy.
All right.
So everything is
I
going.
could use my radio voice.
I love it. It was great.
No, we don't want to seem like we're mocking them. That'd be bad.
No.
Because we're not.
Absolutely not.
Like it.
I'll practice for next time. I'll read it next time.
Okay, we could alternate. That's a good idea.
Yeah. You don't want me reading. Bad idea.
Can you even read?
Some days.
I'm surprised. Okay, you learned something new.
Well, when that zero turns to a number, then there's people watching, but we'll just worry about that when that happens. Tell me when you guys are ready.
It's born.
Let's do it.
Ready.
3, 2, 1. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of ATL on Fire. In fact, it's our 59th podcast, Dave.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Have
we been alive that long?
Feel older every day.
Okay, fair.
Yeah, we're joined by Carmen, the producer, off the screen, but helping us move along. And every one of us is wearing a U.S. soccer jersey or U.S. spirited
Why
shirt.
is that, Mikey Dobbs? Why?
Well, I think we want to get into 10 days away, Dave, to the World Cup.
Oh, right, okay. Right.
Yep.
Fair.
Yep.
All right.
But before we do that, I want to say thanks for bringing another bottle of wine. What are we having?
It's a
here?
Barolo Italian.
Ooh, yeah. I don't even really had a full sip here.
Yeah.
Loving
In
that.
honor, let's just say in honor of when the U.S. first qualified for the World Cup after we forget about 1950, in the modern era, when we first qualified for the World Cup in 1990 in Italy.
Excellent.
All right. Very good.
And we did not.
I won't mention that it required a last-second goal from Paul Caligiuri in Trinidad and Tobago for us to qualify.
I thought you were going to say.
I was watching that match. Believe it or not.
Really?
Yeah, you could get it in New York. No, on TV. It was in Trinidad. And when I was a kid.
Well, I thought you said you were going to bring an Italian wine to recognize that Italy is nowhere near this coming World Cup.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah. Sorry about that.
Sorry.
Don't need to mock them.
Well, on the topic of spirits, we also need to maybe shift and have a beer every once in a while, Dave, because you know what?
Very nice.
We got a new sponsor.
I'm going to go with, I don't always drink beer, but when I do, I drink Wild Heaven.
That's correct. Wild Heaven Brewery. And if you're not familiar with Wild Heaven, it's a brewery here in Avondale Estates. Fantastic. They also have a brewery that they opened maybe a year and a half or so ago in West End.
So, really? I didn't know they had a second one. That's awesome.
2 locations, yeah. And dog friendly. They typically have food up there. Nice indoor-outdoor space here in Avondale Estates.
I have to say, I haven't been to the brewery, but I do love their beer. The emergency drinking beer,
EBD.
really good.
Yeah, we wouldn't take on a sponsor we didn't fully back. So
Many times.
we have no problem.
We've already backed them.
Yeah.
We've already drank more than our sponsorship. So there you go.
So, yeah, if you guys haven't made it there, 2 locations.
Yeah.
And also, what else is happening, Dave? I'm working on a new logo. I've put kind of like the beta version online. For the most part, I think the poll says people are liking it. I only got 1 terrible or F on the poll that I took on the one that's out there now,
That's
which
impressive.
means it's at least a real poll. Like people are being honest, right? Like I wouldn't.
Somebody gives you an F, they're being real.
Yeah, I wouldn't feel good about it unless somebody was a hater. So somebody's got better design skills and is like,
I know it's not Twitter unless there's a hater out there.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Now, what else? We are committed fully to the U.S. Soccer Coaches Conventions. Now, we booked our flights after our last podcast. Yeah. And, do you want to tell us a little bit about that and remind our listeners?
Okay, so this is our disclaimer about the U.S. Soccer Convention. You don't want to miss the 2023 United Soccer Coaches Convention in Philadelphia from January 11th to the 15th. The convention is the largest gathering of soccer coaches, administrators, and fans in the world. Only at the convention can you attend sessions crafted with your coaching level and desired topics in mind. Presented by world-class educators, our collection of over 200 lecture sessions and field demonstrations will offer every coach something to bring back to their own training sessions. Even me, Mikey Dobbs.
Heck yeah.
All right, come learn from...
And me, I'm coaching under 8.
All right. There you go. Come learn from Amanda Vandevort, president of the USL Super League, Anthony Flores, youth technical director of the Philadelphia Union, Becky Burley and Brat Ledbetter from What Drives Winning, Laura Harvey, head coach of the Olympic Reign, Dan Abrahams, world-renowned sports psychologist, and more presenters will be announced in the months leading up to the convention. So visit www.unitedsoccercoachesconvention.org to register before the next price increase.
Excellent. Yeah, and I was watching some kind of sizzle reels from the last couple coaches conventions. Yeah. One in, I think, St. Louis, maybe, if I'm not mistaken, and
I want to say it was Kansas City.
Kansas City, sorry, yeah, and also there was one previously in Philadelphia as well. So this thing looks like a big deal. We are going to rub shoulders.
Well, if we're going to be there,
yeah, I mean, people are going to rub shoulders.
Carmen,
with us.
What do you think? If we're going to be there, it's a big deal, right?
Huge,
yeah.
Huge.
Well, yeah, there you go.
No, but I am excited. We have to figure out how we're going to play the logistics of maximizing the time to figure out who we can interview and that type of thing. So,
we talk about it all, so we can do it all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we teased it at the beginning, but boy, they dropped it on ESPN. I guess bought the rights to the U.S. men's national team roster, and made a whole production out of it that was a little overboard. But
they flew in like half the team, or maybe a third of the team.
Yeah. But Dave, what did you think about the announcements of the starting? Was it 26 players?
26. It's increased. Normally the rosters are only 22 or 23, but it's increased, and that's presumably because there are 5 subs in the World Cup this year.
Yeah. And they are probably just arriving and unpacking in their rooms right now. I think they flew out today, right? So
they're already in Qatar, you mean?
I believe so, yeah. Wow. They were mentioning that they were about to get on a plane this morning. So,
okay.
Which makes sense. We were 10 days away from the opening game, which is November 20th. And I'm assuming that's the host Qatar versus somebody. And I don't even know who that is. But
yeah, the host always plays in the first game.
And we play Wales on the 22nd? Is that right?
I mean, how come we couldn't draw Qatar in our group? They have like 12 people in the whole country.
What's
it's like the size of Avondale Estates.
But you're really good at these stats, Dave. And I don't know if it's FIFA, paying off the refs. Like almost every host nation makes it out of their group, like statistically, right?
Yeah, I think for a long time it was every single one.
Right.
I feel like South Africa didn't. Did they not get out?
That may be right.
I think that might be right.
They may have been the first that didn't. I think I knew I'd go to the big mind. But yeah, but statistically,
everybody assumed it was going to be the U.S. in '94, and we did get out of our group.
Yeah. Now, what was the biggest shock to you on the announcement of the 26?
The whole dang roster is a shock, Mikey Dobbs.
Okay.
I mean, there's shocks throughout. It might as well be, field mine of shocks.
Yeah, so there's certainly shocks just right out of the gate from the goalkeeper announcement. Yeah. So you want to start there?
Start with the goalkeepers.
Right? Your boy, Sean Johnson, got picked.
Yeah. So I actually have said that I think I might be inclined to start Sean Johnson, but, and this might be a theme of what I'm about to get to, I would not have picked Sean Johnson or be inclined to start him, having not used him at all in qualifying or anything else.
Right. I mean, that's the funny thing about a lot of these choices is that all this time we've had, it's like he went through and then just was like, nope, these guys aren't cutting it. So in the last, several months, he's had a change of heart on people that he has given a lot of runway to.
It's almost like he looked at the roster for the first time, deciding to make the decisions, and was like, okay, now I'll make my decisions.
So Zach Steffen is not one of our goalkeepers going to Qatar. We've got Sean Johnson, who you presume is, the third or second. Ethan Horvath, or how do you pronounce it? Horvath. And then I'm assuming Matt Turner is our starter. Wow, I really would have thought, given all the lead up, that he had trusted, Zach Steffen to be the starter.
So we really only played 2 goalkeepers ever in the last year or so. I know people will say, oh, Evan Horvath did make one emergency appearance. Yes, but by and large, we really only played 2 goalkeepers in any match that mattered, and that was Turner and Zach Steffen. So 100% guaranteed that it's going to be Turner and Steffen on the plane to Qatar, and yet no. Right?
What do you think about this? I was thinking about this today, right? Zach Steffen clearly was on the bench too long at Man City.
Yes.
Needed to be playing.
I agree.
But I feel like he made a hasty move to go to Middlesbrough, I think is where he is now.
Yes, in the championship.
And he did that with a short timeline to prove that he wanted to get minutes and could be the starter.
Right.
That is messing with his career, because I feel like Zach Steffen was at Man City, the biggest club in the world, or in the top 5 right now. Mm-hmm. But right now it is the hottest club in the world. Sure. Maybe not the
certainly
best.
They're probably the top team in the world, right?
Yeah, I mean, Erling Haaland is just setting it on fire, literally. And so I'm, and then he's not the only example where players shifted to, Ricardo Pepi, I think, is another example.
Sure.
Where they are making club decisions to, presumably prove that they're, game worthy for the.
Which is never a good idea.
Yeah.
I mean, see Walker Zimmerman as example A, right? You don't need to just play well.
True, but the other thing is, like, with the Zach Steffen, play well. I don't know. Like, why would you use that against somebody who clearly on paper is our best goalkeeper?
Well, so here's the thing.
And
right?
in reality, probably as well.
Here's the thing. Right. So I can completely understand. In fact, I'm super for that. You don't really want to have a goalkeeper being your starting goalkeeper who's not playing. You don't want a guy who's sitting on the bench. You want a guy in rhythm who's playing all the time. I get that. Right. So in my opinion, if you believe that as a coach, then Zach Steffen should not have been in any of the qualifiers. He wasn't playing at all for Man City. So if you think that you have to be a starting goalkeeper to be on that plane to Qatar, and we can talk about the name of the
have an honest conversation with Zach Steffen too, to be like, hey, probably not going to include you if you're going to be on the bench. And he could have done that way before it became
but instead he plays him when he wasn't playing, and then he goes switch to clubs, so now he is playing, and then he doesn't get included on the roster. What the F?
But that's my point. If Greg Berhalter's philosophy was, I'm not going to start you if you're not playing, then he should have been real clear with his players about that.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, right, the guy who's going as our number 1, right, he ain't playing either.
Right.
He's not even sniffing the field. They played in a cup match on this midweek, and he didn't even play in the cup match.
Was it
he was on the
Caribou?
bench.
He didn't start. Wow.
He didn't even start the cup match.
Really?
I mean.
But was that because of the World Cup, you think?
Well.
To be fair.
People said, it's because he's injured or something, but he was on the bench, so he clearly could have played. Right. And he's fine enough to go to the World Cup, so he can play.
But, I mean, but my point is one game at this point going to make a difference when the World Cup's 10
No, but what that proves is that he is absolutely not even close to a starter, right? Because if he was even close to the starter, they would have started him in the cup match, at least. Right? He's not playing at all. There's only one goalkeeper, right? I mean, I guess, so Ethan Horvath is starting, but it's not in a top team. It's for Luton Town, right? I mean, I'm not even. Is Luton Town a championship team?
They're
or
a
is it
championship. They're typically at the top of the table of the
But
championship.
in any case, they're not a Premier League team. The only one who's starting, who's been starting religiously is Sean Johnson. And I get that. So if you're like, okay, and I would have said this. I would have said, look, you're not going to be the U.S. national team goalkeeper unless you're starting and playing all the time. I need a guy who's in rhythm and is in form. And so I would have said in the qualifiers, Sean Johnson's my starting goalkeeper, right? Because he's the only one who's playing. I would have said, sorry, Zach Steffen, you were amazing, but you made a choice to go to Man City and you're sitting on the bench. So get off the bench somewhere or you're not going.
Yeah.
Right? Period. Right. And I would have said to Matt Turner, okay, and he was playing when he was in the U.S. in the qualifiers. He was playing in MLS. But I would have said, if you go to Arsenal and you go straight to the bench, which is what I think is going to happen to you, bye-bye, you're not on the plane.
Yeah. And you know what I would have done if I was Turner?
What?
Bye-bye, I'm going to Arsenal because that's the right career move. You know what I
No,
mean?
it's not.
It is because
He's not playing.
Dude, at any moment, the starting goalkeeper, and I forget his name for Arsenal, could go down or go in bad form. I mean, he's been playing great, but that's how you make a big name for yourself when you get to a big club. I'm sorry, like you don't turn down Arsenal, you don't turn down Man City, which is why Zach Steffen went there.
I would have.
Well, I think it's a bad.
I would have said if Zach Steffen goes and he went to a lower Premier League team, he would have walked right into the starting job. He can earn himself goalkeeper of the year, and then you transfer to a club that needs a goalkeeper like Chelsea, right?
Yeah.
And you walk in as the starter there. Like, be smart about it. Don't go compete against Ederson, the best goalkeeper in the world. That's just ridiculous.
So you're saying he should have kicked out Pickford?
Yeah, go challenge Pickford.
Is he actually going to be the England? That was a dig at England.
Yeah, he's the starting goalkeeper for England.
So, Turner could have
even
taken
though
his
it
job.
should absolutely be Pope, who's a better goalkeeper, right?
Yeah. Well, Elliot's helping us out. Elliot's listening to us streaming.
Yeah.
And,
Okay.
Ramsdale.
Yes.
He's the Arsenal keeper.
Ramsdale, that's right.
Ramsdale.
I should have remembered that for the All or Nothing documentary.
Right. Yeah. The young guy and his parents were there, and I felt their goalie parent.
Yeah.
But okay, so the only justification for what he did, which is to leave Zach Steffen at home, is, and people are bringing this up, right? They say, okay, well, you don't want to create any kind of controversy. It's sort of like in the NFL justification, you never want to carry two quarterbacks. It's always a problem, right? Two quarterbacks who are the starters, basically, right? Because nobody's ever happy. So Zach Steffen, as the not starter, is going to be, in this scenario, miserable, and he's going to bring the team down, right?
Yeah.
Here's my problem with this, okay? Here's my problem. If Zach Steffen is the second best player, right, then what happens? That's all good and well as long as Matt Turner stays healthy. If Matt Turner gets injured or he gets COVID or whatever, right, then now you're saying that we left the other guy home just for squad, morale. Yeah. I'm like, if it would be one thing if Zach Steffen had been constantly bitching or whatever and had been, bad for morale on the team. I haven't heard anything about that. Nobody has said anything about that, right? So to me, it's just another example of the only reason I can think of. And if that's true, Berhalter is just overthinking stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, I'm a big fan of bringing your most talented players. And that's, Zach Steffen.
And if you're going to make that decision, right? So if you decide, like, if you're like, look, I'm going to have a starting goalkeeper and I want a true number one and I don't want him to feel pressure from a number two so that he's panicked or worried about who's going to start what match, right? Then you make your decision and you make it in qualifiers. You make it in the run-up. And so you say, all right, I'm going to go with Matt Turner, and you don't let Zach Steffen be part of the equation at all. Yeah. Right. Because if you think about this whole argument that Zach Steffen is going to be a problem if he's there and he's not a starter, the other problem is, if you're a guy on the U.S. national team and you've played on a lot of good teams, right? If you were in qualifiers and you had two goalkeepers who were competing all the time and they had your back, they were your guy. They basically played even in the qualifiers, right? And you then went to get on the plane for Qatar, right? And the coach dropped one of them. You'd be like, give him the figure. Like, what are you doing to our guy? That's not squad morale.
Yeah, that's what just happened.
Yeah, you'd be pissed off if you were one of the players on the plane. You'd be like, this guy worked his butt off for us in qualifying. He slept from Manchester City all the way to freaking South America to play in qualifiers, and this is what your reward is for that?
I like it. I feel like we should have had a fire button there.
I was shocked by the flicking off motion. I was like, that might be enough. That might be enough.
That was your signal. That was your signal.
I wasn't ready.
He's basically giving the finger to one of the players who has been part of the squad. And so,
and he's like, oh, Sean,
without any
Sean,
reason.
Ethan, I know you guys haven't really been much of the play, the build up. Sure. Come on the plane.
Yeah.
Okay. Goalkeepers. There's Greg's philosophy on that. I think we checked that box. Now we're going to go to the back line, which unfortunately is a little decimated in the center back role. You knew Walker Zimmerman was going to be a lock, right? Dest and I think Anthony Robinson on the right and left.
Jedi Robinson.
Yeah, Jedi and
those were locks, right?
Yeah, those are all kind of locks, right? So the big question is, you know, we saw a lot of Aaron Long. Was he going to cut it? Was it Tim Ream ended up making it as well as Aaron Long, Vickers, and who else am I leaving out of the back?
So they got Joe
Scally. Yeah, I like that. That's a good pick in my mind.
Shaq Moore, DeAndre Yedlin are the other defenders on the plane.
Yeah, you had to bring Yedlin. He's one of our only veterans, right?
Yep. Yedlin's an automatic.
But,
I mean, obviously.
Why is Long coming?
Long's going to be the starter.
No, he's not.
Yes, he is.
Ream is going to be next to Zimmerman to start.
Really?
I agree with you. I think
it's
that's probably what's going to happen. But
it's going to be Des, Ream.
The problem
Zimmerman
with
and
Ream is
Robert.
that he likes to play this high line, and Ream's 35 years old. And again, and this is my my rant, if you will, right? If you are Greg Berhalter, right, and you are going to ultimately make the decision to bring Long and Ream as your options, right? You would think that Long and Ream would be in every squad that you could have picked. You know, even, for example, when we had Miles Robinson, they would be the second guy behind him, right? Not only were they not that way, right, but even in this latest round when we were in, we played again, we got annihilated by Saudi Arabia and Japan. It was terrible. They didn't even be in a squad.
Yeah.
What in the world? So the moment that Miles Robinson went down, and he had clearly secured the spot, it was Zimmerman and Robinson were the clear pair, right? The moment he went down as a coach, you're thinking, all right, I got to get a replacement. Maybe I'm going to fiddle around and whatever, but all the guys who are candidates, they better be in every single camp, and they're fighting for the spot, and I maybe try a couple of things, but I can only try for a certain amount of time. As we get closer, the months, whatever, I got to have the two guys, I got to stick with them, and they got to be set. Right now, nobody is set.
Is this signs of good coaching?
It's signs of horrible coaching.
Okay. Because, you know, a lot of people just like to crap on Berhalter. I think these are good examples of why people should be crapping on Berhalter. Because I don't really, I never, like, out of the gates, like, people had a bad, like, they were already ready to throw arrows at the guy. But now, especially with the examples of what you just said with Zach Steffen, you drag him along and then you're like, last second, see ya. You all of a sudden, you know, bring Ream in out of the blue when you had chances, you know, in this last little leg against Japan.
And before you go and say, oh, yes, he did play one qualifier, played in I think it was the very first qualifier, and then never made
they said it was like El Salvador.
Never made any squad yet. No, we're not talking about playing. I'm not even talking about playing. He didn't even make the squad for any of the other qualifiers or the recent things, right? So, and people say, oh, okay, you know, well, yeah, but he's been playing well. He's playing in the Premier League and Fulham, you know, they're a ninth place team and whatever. Okay, but you cannot go into a World Cup and put two guys next to each other for the first time.
Yeah.
Right? That is a recipe for disaster. I mean, how many people get out of their group with two center backs who have never played together?
Yeah. So with that in mind, do you think it doesn't even matter because might as well play them together out of the gates if that's your best option. There's no point in like putting Long in against Wales and
not to mention
go.
It doesn't fit his system at all. right? So he plays a really high line, and the one thing that, so people said, all right, well, Tim Ream is playing really well, right? He is playing well for Fulham, right? Fulham has a low, like, what's the lower than low block? Like when the guys are sitting and they never, they go basically from their own 18 maybe to 10 yards outside their 18, and then they go back to the 18. That's where he plays, right? When you play that way
at 35,
that
works.
You don't need pace at all because there's only 10 yards to cover, right? You may have to retreat from your own 18 back to your 6, but then you go back to the 18, right? When you play a high line like Burhall wants to play, and you have your back guy, past midfield, now ball over the top, he's a 40-yard sprint one-on-one, right? And I heard people saying, okay, he's playing well at Fulham, that makes sense. He's playing in a completely different system, people, right? So unless you're going to switch to doing that, if you want to sit back with him, then he'll do well. He's not going to do well in a high line.
Who would you have looked at early on, 6, 8, 10 plus months ago, not knowing Miles Robinson and Richards is now out as well?
Yeah, the big one was, Richards was a surprise. People thought he was going to be back. But he played McKenzie in a whole bunch of matches who's younger and whatever. But he's not, he's out. He didn't make the squad, but he's not hurt. He's healthy, right? So I know he's prone to mistakes, right? And you say that or whatever, but okay, so keep playing him, get all the mistakes out if that's the guy you decided on, right? Or, Cameron Carter-Vickers, who is this, captain and starter for Celtics. People are like, oh, that's a good pick. He's playing really well. I agree. But it's not a good pick since he's never been in a World Cup qualifier, ever. He's only played in like 3 U.S. matches. He didn't even come into the last camp, right? So that's what makes it a terrible pick. Even if you decided, right, that, okay, we got to find the replacement. If he's one of the candidates, he needed to come in and get a shot in a World Cup qualifier, right? I mean, you have to. And you say, all right, well, he wasn't, the captain yet. He wasn't starting for Celtic, whatever. He was starting for Celtic last year. But even regardless of all of that, right, you cannot make a World Cup team based on your form in the first month of the season. And that has nothing to do with whether you're playing really well. It has everything to do with you have to be part of the team. There is no player on this planet who can walk into a team and suddenly be comfortable and play your best when you've never played in that team before. I mean, every player, as we know, who's ever transferred takes time to settle. The best players in the world ever probably take 3 months to settle, right? Many of them take a year to settle, right? You think that suddenly Tim Ream or Carter Vickers are going to settle in like 2 weeks of training without any matches?
Well, they've got to figure it out against Wales. Let's keep going, but you know what else got left behind, Dave?
What?
The Barolo. I'll be right back.
All right, so I'll keep going. Yeah. So the other thing that I'm going to also bring up, courtesy of Atlanta United, I think that the U.S. national team strikes me as a lot like Atlanta United in that all of our mega talent, right, is all in the middle and the front line, right. And so, again, if that's your team, right, you don't need a back line that's going to go forward all the time. And I think Jedi Robinson is actually pretty good. He plays well defensively and goes well forward. Serginho Dest, whenever we've seen him, has been terrific going forward and suspect defending, right? So, in my opinion, I would have said, okay, right, again, I would have looked at my squad and said, what is the strength? What are we going to do? And I said, my strength is what we haven't talked about yet, the midfield and the forwards. And I would have just been looking to put together a back four that can just play and blank everything, right?
Okay. So do you want to move on to midfield then?
Sure.
So I guess we've got, is it Jordan Morris? Is he more of a forward? More of a forward. So it's Roldan then.
Roldan was the controversial, sort of pick. But, So the midfield picks itself, and I don't think anybody was surprised by any of the picks, right? So the starting midfield three that he's been going with all the time, right, is Tyler Adams, defensive midfield, Musa, and Weston McKennie, right? So those three, you've got to
excellent players.
Yeah, and in my opinion, which I think he's leaned a little bit towards, in a game that you might want to be a little more defensive, like England, maybe you bring in Kellen Acosta to play alongside Tyler Adams. You play two defensive guys and only play one attacker, which presumably would be Weston McKennie. And so I think that's all settled. You have a couple of guys who can, off the bench, change something. So Luca De La Torre, who I really like, can dribble. He's terrific. And they're listing Brendan Aronson as a midfielder. Obviously, I think he's better served on maybe in the forward line, but, whatever.
So I'm going to come back to him, but...
And as far as Christian Roldan is concerned, he's been in a ton of camps. He is a veteran presence. People really like him. I think when you have a roster of 26, that's a fine pick. Again, not only is he your 26th player is very unlikely to play, right? Not as only is he not likely to play much, but he also brings a presence, and he's been around the whole team the whole time. He's been in all the qualifiers.
So I know there's some controversies of forwards that didn't make it into the squad, but what about midfielders that are left out here? It doesn't seem like there's people like that you question why Roldan got in, but who else maybe should have been in?
The only one is people said Tillman, that he's a little more up and coming and he could have been on the plane, to get the experience. Roldan gets, the only thing you say about bringing a veteran is that you miss bringing an experienced guy. You miss bringing on a guy for experience, and so you're building for the future.
2026.
But if you look at our team is so young, right? We're already bringing a team that you figure is being played in this World Cup in order to be awesome in 4 years. So I don't have any problem.
Right. So let Tillman, if he develops and he's ready, then he'll be the guy who gets his experience in that World Cup.
I agree.
Okay. I'm cool with that. All right. Now, the forward position, I think the biggest controversy there was Pfalk and Pepe not making it, right?
Yep. They didn't make it. And instead, you got Haji Wright and Jordan Morris. Also Jesus Ferreira, but Jesus Ferreira has been in, a bunch of the teams. Josh Sargent makes it.
So Haji Wright's been playing really well. He's playing for a Turkish team, correct? And he's scored 9 goals in the last 11 games, but again, hasn't been a part of the process.
Yeah, this is what's so nuts. People are like, Haji Wright clearly got picked over P-Funk at the end, right? Haji Wright's a little bit different. He's, I guess, a little more pacey, and he's big too, but he also can score in the end. He's the kind of guy who can really score goals and might be great off the bench for 10 minutes. So I'm like, great, brilliant. People are saying this kind of a sleeper, brilliant pick. The only reason why it's not a brilliant sleeper pick is Haji Wright in the last calendar year is one of the leading scorers in all of Turkey. He scored like 20-something goals in the last the last physical year before now, right? If that's the case, he's no longer just hot, he's good. Why in the world was he not in any squad? Why wasn't he picked for a qualifier? Why wasn't he picked for the last call-up? Nothing.
Right.
Why not give him a part to get comfortable in this team? Why now? And you might say, sometimes a team picks a guy who was out of nowhere and suddenly gets hot and scores, starts in the Premier League and suddenly scoring all the time and you bring him, okay. But this guy has been hot for a year and still not making the squad.
Ricardo Pepe's gone cold, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, because he's not great.
Yeah, and he had a good little run, and so I'm not too disappointed Pepe didn't make it. He played his part in getting us, some wins. I think in the which Mexican game was that he came in and scored a couple goals or whatever cup that was.
Yeah, he scored like 3 goals in 2 games at one point.
So he had a hot little run there, but since then he's really, tried to prove himself internationally and is fallen a little bit flat from what I'm hearing.
Right. He hasn't done anything. He's not playing anymore.
So the people are saying, why isn't Pepe there? I understand why he's not there. But yeah, the Haji thing and him already having a resume that's been building up for over 12 months, and Greg not recognizing that and bringing him into the squad to be a part of it makes
That's
no
what I'm
sense.
saying. I have no problem with Haji Wright being on the plane if he's that good. But if he's that good and he's been that good for a year, why not be part of the team?
And another player is P-Falk, right?
Yeah, P-Funk's been hot too.
He's been hot too. And then you've got Jordan Morris, which in my mind is a tier below both of those. I'm a huge Jordan Morris fan, by the way.
He was amazing until the first
The
and then
injury.
second ACL.
2 injuries. So that's why I'm rooting for him. But like, why are you bringing a guy that statistically 2 ACL injuries? It is moronic.
And he's not really scoring in Seattle either.
Like I said, I am a fan of Jordan Morris because he has gone through so much. But we just mentioned 2 players that clearly should be a part of this team, or one of them should be a part of the team in my mind. If you have to pick, right? Jordan Morris out, one of those 2 in.
And here's
Pepe is not in my conversation at all, but
here's my other rant, and that so Berhalter's been busy ramming a square peg into a round hole, right? We have known for how long, certainly the entire qualifying process, and probably at least a good 6 months before that the U.S. has an amazing attack and no recognizable striker. Okay. Right. So, I mean, the guys who are amazing, Gio Reyna, right? Tim Weah, right? Pulisic, right? I mean, Aronson, right? All of these guys, amazing forwards, playing at really good clubs, legit, right? The only thing is none of them are recognizable, number 9, classic forward, blah, 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 right? So what he's been doing is continually rotating and ramming a square peg into a round hole, okay? So the same thing happened to the coach who I consider to be probably the best coach in the world, right, at Man City, Guardiola. Everybody said he needed a recognizable number 9. He went after Kane from Tottenham, and he didn't get him last year. And everybody said, look, their season's going to be shot. They can't, whatever. They were the leading scorer in the Premier League last year by a mile, right? With no recognizable forward. All he did was say, look, we've got not a million, I exaggerate, but he's got a whole bunch of players who can all create and score goals, and we don't really need a forward. We're just going to attack you in a different way. That looks, I don't know, like exactly like the U.S. We got Pulisic, we got Aronson, we got Weah, we got Gio Reyna, right? It looks like a bunch of guys who are more classic, playing in behind the 9, attacking players. Why not say, look, admit who we are, admit what we have, figure out a system where those guys can be playing together all the time, get them playing well together in qualifying, and stop slamming a terrible forward into that team just because you feel like we have to have a forward.
Yeah. Do you think that Josh Sargent should be on the squad? Given we just talked P-Falk and
if you're ramming a forward peg into a round hole, sure. Right now he looks like the best of them. Right? He's scoring a lot in the championship.
Yeah, he's scoring a little bit.
I mean, in fairness to him, or in fairness to your maybe sighing, when he was in the Premier League, he couldn't score anything. Right. Now,
he doesn't seem to be able to score for the U.S. men's national team either.
Well, the team that he was playing for, not the U.S. national team, but when he was playing for Norwich,
right.
I mean, we said the same thing last week about Almiron, right? That when Newcastle was just sitting back, he never scored.
I agree. Like, Josh Sargent seems to be playing hard, but out of his best role at Norwich City, which is why he just didn't get the numbers. But.
Well, I would argue that as soon as Norwich City got relegated and are playing at a lower level, and they're no longer just sitting back in a super low block, and he actually has support, he started scoring again. So all that says is that you can say, the classic thing is to want to say he can only score at a lower level against lower defenders. I don't think that's ever true. And I don't really think that the defenders in the Premier League are so much better than the Championship. I mean, they're better, but not so much. I think a guy who drops down and starts scoring, it's usually because now his team is playing on the front foot and he's getting more chances. And, the classic example of this, people said this for years, that Vardy would never be able to score because he was a championship scorer, but he was on a good team finally in the Premier League, and he can score all kinds of goals, right? Yeah. So,
same with Bamford.
I feel like Sargent can score.
Yeah. I mean, Bamford's a class. I mean, he's been cold lately, but he obviously was hot when Bielsa got him up to the Premier League. I mean, that was a guy nobody had confidence in. But when you set the system up to make that guy succeed, right, boom, there you go. All right.
So I don't have a problem with Sargent. In fact, I would say of all the players, if you're going to force someone to play, I mean, so it seems like with this system that Berhalter is going to force a forward to play. So he's got a choice between Sargent and Ferreira, presumably as the two starters, right? And that means that he's only starting Pulisic of the three, Pulisic, Weah, and Reyna. He's only starting two of the three.
So what is the tactical strategy you see from Greg building up to the World Cup? Like what
formation?
Yeah, well, just it's formation and style of play. Like if you were to have identified anything that you would say this is his system or madness or whatever it is, like how would you define what you've been seeing the last year?
He likes to play forward, really high line, and turn the ball over up front. You know, a lot of pressure. I worry because, again, if you're going to do that, if you're going to have a pressure system, the key to pressing is having a really, really good back line who can match up and who can win one-on-one battles.
Again, is our biggest weakness.
Their biggest weakness. I mean, you know,
Liverpool
was not turning the ball over and scoring until they got Van Dijk. You know, people said, why did Liverpool start scoring so many more goals? It's because they got Van Dijk. And you're like, well, Van Dijk's a defender. Why does that result in goals? It's because now he suddenly could match up and everything moves up the field. You win the ball more up the field. And guys like Salah and Mane could score when they're getting the ball up the field, right? As soon as they stopped winning the ball up the field, then they got problems again.
So, question. With the roster that we have going to the World Cup, who is missing from who you would have as your starting 11 if we go into the World Cup 2 weeks from now or less than 2 weeks?
You know, it's not that I think that somebody is missing.
So as a starter, right? Because I want to get to Dave's starting 11.
Yeah.
And I want to start by, is anybody missing on this roster? Looking back at the last year and the resume of people like Pfalk and whomever, that you would say, yeah, that guy'd be absolutely coming with me right now.
I probably would have brought Pfalk because he's proven on this team as a last 10-minute guy that he can do it. But I don't really think the roster is so bad in terms of who I would have not or would have included or not included. I mean, for example, I think, that Cameron Carter-Vickers could be really the answer at center back. But he has no chance of being the starting center back because are you going to stick him in the starting back at this point? I mean, it would be really gutsy to do that, right? I think in this formation that he's trying to play, Tim Ream is a disaster. And Carter-Vickers has a lot of pace and maybe has a chance to do better in that. But he's not going to be the starter, so that's my problem.
Folks, if at some point Ream starts getting beaten over the top, I wonder if Dave's prediction comes true here. We'll see Vickers come in.
A number of people
a day late, $1 short
said to me that, you know, I was, you know, listening and I heard some people saying that, that, you know, the thing about Tim Ream is he's 35 years old. He's been relegated and promoted and, you know, he's a veteran presence. If we give up a bad goal, then, you know, he could really calm the team. And I said, yeah, but it's probably him who just gave up the bad goal. Right? So if he wasn't in the team to begin with, you wouldn't need him to calm the team down.
Yeah. So starting 11 for Wales then, given the 26 we have. Who's Dave going with?
I think the entire team would pick itself.
I'm going to, because I already know it's not, because I have you already know what my curveball and your starting 11 is. So I want to hear your starting 11, and then I'm going to put in my guy who already in the last podcast said was the most important player for the U.S. men's national team. Because I doubt he's in your starting 11 unless you throw a curveball back at me.
I think he is in my starting 11.
Okay, I love it. Oh, damn. This messed up my whole setup then. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Agreeing again.
Damn it.
Okay, go.
So, you know, again, I guess the question is right now you're talking about the starting 11, not who I would have, you know, for example, I would have built Sean Johnson over years.
This is
in reality.
You are Greg Berhalter. You've made your decision. Okay. You're going to Qatar. Right. You're there right now. They're there right now.
All right.
Who are we starting against Wales with with the team we have?
Matt Turner in goal, Serginho Dest at right back, Walker Zimmerman, and I'm just going to pass. No, we'll get back to that. Jedi Robinson at left back. The center midfield is Tyler Adams, Musa, and Weston McKennie. And the front three are Gio Reyna on the left, Pulisic in the center, and Aronson on the right.
Okay.
That would be my starting lineup. And I have it's an absolute
Between
disaster.
Long and Ream or Vickers?
Honestly, I would go with Long over Ream because even though Long is playing worse, he's been in poor form and he's not good. Ream doesn't fit that system at all. If you're going to play high at all, you got to have somebody who can chase somebody. And even though Tim Ream is the better defender, he's not the better defender in that system that he's going to play. So I wouldn't play that system. If I were the coach tomorrow, I would abandon the high line because you're done. Somebody's going to get behind it.
So if I heard your starting, did you have Weah in your starting lineup?
No, I had Aronson.
Okay.
And I think Weah would be my change the game off the bench guy.
Okay.
I'd play him a lot.
You know what's funny is I am one player different than you, which here's my change in your starting 11.
Okay.
And I agree, like the whole other center back thing is just a toss-up.
It's a disaster.
Right? So, and I think everyone would agree with us on that.
It's an absolute disaster.
I actually might, as the power sub, take Gio Reyna off.
Okay.
Put Brennan Aronson in, and then
let Reyna be the power.
And then Way is out on the right. And then, because I feel like I see more of Aronson on the left side for Leeds.
Okay.
More of his comfort position. He's crushing it over there right now. Let Pulisic, like you said, be like the 10 in the middle. And Aronson's just going to be a fly everywhere. I think you have to have him on the field. But Tim Weah, that dude was born for the World Cup. I don't think you can leave him off.
Well, to be honest with you, I would have said, look, we got 4 guys for 3 spots up front. I would have abandoned a long time ago this search for this mythical striker. And I would have said, we got 4 attacking players, right? Weah, Aronson, Pulisic, and Gio Reyna, right? And going, which is what we have, they're all in good form. They're all healthy, which is a miracle. Going into this tournament, I would have said, I wouldn't likely to have the same 3 starting in any of those matches. I would rotate them. Yep. So I said Aronson and Pulisic and Reyna in the starting match. But in the second game, I would probably bring on Weah probably for Gio Reyna. And you would say, look, Weah is probably a better defensive player against England, right? And then in the third match, you probably then sit Aronson, and you rotate it around.
And I think the good thing is, like, if a Weston McKennie or Musa get injured, right? Like, you could at least evaluate Brendan Aronson to just plug in at more of a midfield versus forward, just because he's capable of doing it and he's so talented. So
I wouldn't do that. I would say if one of those guys gets injured, I would go with Kellen Acosta and be a little bit more defensive, because I'd rather have a guy who's built to the battles of the midfield.
Yeah,
especially when you think about our back line, the center back pairing is going to be a catastrophe. So you better protect the heck out of it.
Yeah. No, but I don't dislike your starting lineup. I just think that Gio Reyna, he might be one of our most talented players as well. He's still coming back from injury quite recently. He's seemingly healthy, but he also is young. He has less experience at this point in my mind than Aronson.
But so is Weah. Weah is young and is coming off an injury. He's a very similar player.
I mean, I guess not as much. Aronson may actually have his less experience if you want to talk about, Reyna's overall tenure at Borussia Dortmund. But, I just feel like he's just played so well the last year and a half and just is there and consistent that Gio has not, that you have to start Brendan over him.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't think we disagree very much, unfortunately.
Damn it.
Mikey Dobbs is ready.
Carmen, who do
you think he's going to make the call on? Is it going to be Tim Ream, or is it going to be Aaron Long, or is it going to be some wild card?
I think
Who's that
it's
spot?
gonna. I think it's absolutely gonna be between Tim Ream and Aaron Long.
Yeah.
I think the safe bet is Aaron Long. To your point, which is that he and Zimmerman have played next to each other for a while now, right? And Zimmerman was also and Long were at this like camp the last 2 weeks.
Yep, they've been playing together.
So
at
they've
the
been
MLS
playing
camp.
together. I think that's especially against Wales, right, where you want a little bit, and if it all of a sudden isn't working out of the gates, then you make a change. I think that's unfortunately what is probably going to happen.
I think I'm going to take that bet. This is our second bet.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think Tim Ream's going to start.
I wouldn't disagree with you there, but I'll take the bet anyway because that's what I do.
Our other bet was how far the U.S. would go, right? Is that true?
I think so, yeah.
I said quarterfinals is the furthest we'll
I
make it.
think you said we wouldn't get out of the group first, and then you were like,
You look
then,
at the group.
Then Carmen corrected you the group, and then you said we'd get out of the group, and that was it.
That wasn't my prediction. I said I could see us not getting out of the group, particularly if we lose to Wales. And I said if we beat Wales, everything's on the table.
But the bet was, I think,
can't remember what
you said they would go down in the second round.
No. Our bet was against France making it to the semifinals. I said they would not get to the semifinals. That's our bet.
Really?
It was somebody else besides the U.S. because I did.
Carmen, you got to write these things
I
down.
do
Yeah,
have
I already
to
have
write it
this
down.
clear in my head. It was France. At first, I was going to bet you they weren't going to make it out of the group, but France is obviously going to make it out of the group. Their group is so bad.
It was that. It
Yeah.
was France, because and then Carmen
It
told
It
you
was like
about the group.
Morocco. Yeah.
Wales the spoon.
But I don't think you said. We got to go back and run the tape because you definitely said
I'm positive on this one. It was the
I thought you said they wouldn't get to the quarterfinal, to the semifinal.
when we were talking about the U.S. men's national team.
No.
I wavered all over the place because I think it's my point was we're either going to be a disaster or we'll do pretty solid, which will probably match the best we've ever done. I think we have a ceiling, even though this is the best talent that we've ever had. I still think that ceiling for us is the quarterfinals.
Okay.
I agree with that. I don't think we get further than that.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a heck of a result. It would set us up for 2026. I think that's where we need
I
to.
don't think we're even getting the quarterfinals, even though I think our team should.
Now, you said different on the last podcast we're going to talk about. Now we're going back to tape because you also agreed we would get to the quarterfinals, but I also said that would be our cap. Now, I was all over the place.
Berhalter has really got me. I've seen the squad now.
It really has thrown me, the roster.
The
It's
roster
just
is
all
like
over the-
it's like picking out of like.
But at the same time, I didn't.
Flyer. Why did he take all those flyers? What the?
Well, like we said, there's only two really big shocks, right? Which is Stefan not going, and do we need PFOC, right? So in terms of like people that you would bring, right? You're not saying we don't have somebody other than Zach Steffen or PFOC that's like
Yeah, that's true.
a huge issue. So I'm
But he
also
brought
getting
a bunch of people you'd never heard of.
no, but I think people know who Haji Wright is. I mean, right?
Yeah, it's like we know about them, but he didn't. I just
Nobody
feel like
knows who Haji Wright is. Nobody.
Maybe
Okay,
like
well-
best friends with all these people. Maybe he bought them
Yeah.
for like support, moral support.
I think he bought them off
much
just
of a
like
soccer nerd.
the whole reason why the World Cup's in Qatar for to begin with.
Yeah.
By the way, it is crazy they changed the whole name of their country for us, right?
They did.
So it's Qatar, right? It's been Qatar for 20 years or something, but because they know Americans can't pronounce it, they're like Qatar.
No, really?
Yes.
Oh, there's so many YouTube videos on this, by the way, on how you pronounce.
Yeah, but originally,
it's
they've abandoned it for not just for the U.S., for the whole world audience who doesn't know.
It's guitar.
Qatar, but that's not how you originally pronounced it. It was Qatar.
Yeah, but it's like a little bit of G. It's like almost like a little quiet G.
So if
in
you
there.
go
Guitar.
back, we should do an experiment. If you go back, they have an airlines, right? The
Yes.
Qatar Airlines, right? And they've had commercials in the U.S. for like 20 years. If you go back 10 years to those commercials, they're like, fly Qatar Airlines. And now they're like, fly Qatar Airlines. They changed it.
So it's more of like a kit.
I don't know. It's
Which
what
is it,
Americans
Dave?
can say.
It's Qatar.
Well,
or
I finally
Qatar?
learned how to say Qatar, and they changed it on me.
Qatar.
Qatar.
Yeah,
The southern
yeah,
one.
down here.
Qatar.
That's it.
Man,
Qatar.
we're going down to Qatar.
Qatar.
Like a guitar.
Yeah, Qatar.
All right.
That's exactly it. But that's not how you really pronounce it. That's how they only know that foreigners can pronounce it. So it's Qatar Airlines.
Yeah, well.
Now, when it used to be Qatar Airlines, it's weird.
Oh man,
They just, I mean, talk about sellout. They sold out the name of their country.
they sold everything to get
Yeah.
this one. Literally everything.
They put a lot of money in there too.
So, Dave, we talked a little bit about the U.S. team that's going to the World Cup. That's exciting. It's been
It's better than not going to the World Cup. We should remind
eight plus years since we've been to a World Cup, right?
Yeah.
Since we're playing this thing in the winter, and
The women have won like 6 World Cups in the
Guitar.
last 9 since we've been to one.
now, what we already talked about our picks for the winner, so we don't need to go over that. But MLS Cup happened. What was it last
Yeah,
weekend?
there's MLS Cup, and then there's a big MLS announcement for Atlanta United.
Oh, is there?
You know this.
I don't know that I know this.
Yes, you do.
There's a big Atlanta United.
Instead of
announcement?
building a statue where
Oh, well, correct. Yeah, it feels like that's dated now a week later, but yes,
the week has only been a week.
Joseph Martinez
Yeah.
is
Goodbye.
not going to be with the club. To me, that was a shock because I just didn't think they would.
It's
kinda-
been a bit under the radar. I bet not all podcast listeners know that actually.
Well, maybe not.
Because they haven't, for a good reason, they haven't announced it. They have basically leaked it.
Right.
But nobody has come out and said it per se. You know, like they haven't made a big announcement because
Right.
why would you? They're going to be hated for it.
So what I find interesting, right? So they're buying out his contract. I can only assume, right? Which is they're eating the last year of the $4 million in salary. Is that how this works, Dave?
Yes.
I know I'm supposed to know how the money works in the MLS, but
So yes, you're allowed one buyout, and you buy out the contract, a certain amount or whatever, and then they become an unrestricted free agent.
okay.
So it's pretty simple. So we just eat the money.
So we just
Arthur does.
Eat the money. So he was so poisonous to the club that we're just going to eat that money because he can't score anymore, and we can replace. He's bad culture for the clubhouse because he's flipping Aris Campoyo, and we're going to be able to find a better option than Joseph Martinez, who will probably score 20 goals next year with whatever team he's with.
To be fair, we aren't necessarily just going to eat the contract. I am sure they're going to spend the entire offseason trying to transfer him, right? But nobody's going to take him, right? And then because you transfer him would have to be for a large transfer fee, and I don't think anybody wants to pay a large transfer fee. So it's possible we will get a small transfer fee. I think they'd rather eat the contract than take a small transfer fee.
Yeah.
I'm sure some MLS teams will offer a, $500,000, transfer fee or something.
Yeah.
Right. But it would be kind of embarrassing to take that.
Yeah.
Right. So I think they would rather just eat
really?
the
It would
contract.
be embarrassing. They are. I mean, they're in the most embarrassing position of all time right now. What would be embarrassing about taking $500,000?
I would.
I mean, they.
$500,000,
Yeah,
but
I mean they owe
I'm
it
not
to the,
Arthur Blank,
they owe
though.
it to the fans who didn't even get to see Joseph start in the last
No.
NYFC game where we knew that we weren't going to renew his contract. Pineda knew we weren't going to renew his contract,
Right.
and they didn't even have the gumption to have him say goodbye to
Gumption.
our fans at home. Are you kidding me?
He's heating up. He's on fire.
Gumption.
Gumption.
That's when you don't have Darren Eales in the front office to be like, guys, really? Like, I know we're gonna part ways, but you gotta put the guy out on the field and have him on the big screen. So
Yeah.
fans that
Build
came
a statue.
out on a beautiful day in Atlanta can't just clap the guy that maybe this is his last game. Maybe even hint before that game that it's going to be his last game so that people could actually, if you've already made the decision, then,
To be fair, you can only do that if the guy is, worthy of leaving and let going. When it's controversial, when you don't know if he's still good, when he's only 29 still, you can't really do that. You
Yeah.
can't really have that send off, right? So that's in fairness to them. I don't think you could do that, but that's the problem.
well, they think he's washed up.
That's the problem.
They think he's washed up, so
Of
why not
course.
do the send off? Like, you're done. You're not good enough for us. The club.
That would be awfully honest.
The guy that has been the fabric of the
whole
supporters group.
franchise. Yeah, the whole thing.
I mean, it's unbelievable what just happened. I mean, it's if this was any other, like if this was, even baseball or NFL, like this is like such a big story that.
Well, to be fair, there are heroes at teams, and there are really good reasons to move on, and the fans never want to move on. The fans want the player to die, on the field. So I get that, right? There are times when you as an organization have to make the decision that the fans don't want for sentimental reasons, right? But I don't know if that's this case, right? He's 29 years old, and he showed that he can still score goals.
Where do you think he's going to go?
I have a feeling that he's going to end up at another MLS team, and he's going to score 20 goals.
I think so too.
Mm-hmm. Sadly, yes.
Now, they're not going to put him in a competitive team.
Yeah, it depends on what team he goes to. If he went to LA, FC, he'd probably score 30.
Yeah, he probably would. And, I mean, you got to imagine those teams are looking, being like, especially if they can get him on the cheap. And Joseph will probably take it on the cheap just to, give a little. I mean, he's still making that $4.5 million.
Yeah,
they're going to buy that out.
That money. Yeah, he's doubling his money.
So, all right, what else we got? The MLS Cup Finals.
Final.
So speaking of LAFC, what a barn burner that was. Supposedly, and I didn't watch much of the first half.
I watched the whole thing.
Luckily, sounds like the first half was a little boring, but I tuned in the second half. No, it wasn't. Okay.
I feel like from start to finish.
From start to finish, that thing was a barn burner.
Barn burner, but it sounded like, the goals didn't happen till the second half.
Really. No, there were 2 goals in the first half.
Were there?
There were 2 goals in the first half, 2 goals in the second half, 2 goals in overtime.
No, it was 3-3.
Well, one.
Oh, one and one. I mean, sorry. 1 goal in the first half, 1 goal in the second half, 1 goal in the overtime.
Yeah. Okay.
For each. 2, but I said 2, I meant 1 for each team.
Gotcha. Yep. I'm with you.
No.
So, okay. Who were you rooting for? Did you have a team that you were kind of pulling for?
No, I was rooting for a barn burner, which I got. So
I think it made it better to watch to not have to cheer for. And so every goal was awesome. Everything that happened.
They're going to epically blow it again, and they did.
Yeah. So what stood out in that game to you the most? I mean, it was obviously supercharged.
Justin Bieber in the crowd.
Was he in the crowd?
Yes, he was literally amongst the people drinking beer.
Will Ferrell drinking out of the
Did you know that Justin Bieber is 21?
How old is he now? He's got to be like almost 30, right?
The Beeb.
Will Ferrell was there drinking with the crowd. I mean, it was awesome. Awesome. What stood out to me is the spectacle of it all, right? It was an amazing crowd. It was, and they got screwed over. I don't know if you heard, but so the LAFC stadium, which I have been to, not inside, but I've been to the outside, but it's right off the campus of University of Southern California. And University of Southern California has the Rose Bowl is their football stadium, the enormous Rose Bowl. So, and it has a huge parking lot. So basically they built LAFC sort of in the parking lot. And USC had a home football game. USC is a top ranked college team. And so they've already sold all the parking for the college football. So this MLS final, Mikey Dobbs, had no parking. Zero.
Does LA have parking to begin with, though?
Well, they normally do because they normally.
So these people are used to it, so they just have to figure it out.
Normally, they do have parking. They tailgate and everything. They said to the poor fans, "You cannot park." Period. And they had offsite shuttles and whatever, but that crowd they came despite the fact they didn't get a parking spot, Mikey Dobbs. Now, talk about, and they showed up like that.
Yeah. Now, one thing that I feel like I'm not being a homer here, but they were touting this as the best MLS Cup final of all time.
Yes.
And yes, the drama and everything built up, but I don't know, was that the 2018 Atlanta United game, just in terms of like the atmosphere of 72,000 people. I watched a YouTube video of somebody inside the stadium, and I just saw the LA fans. Like, what was cool about the MLS 2018 final is even like the mainstream fans in the Atlanta United Benz Stadium, everybody was losing their heads. I mean, they were screaming like from the start of the game to the end of the game. I watched a YouTube video of like just somebody casually going around during the game, and it was pretty like, it was a beautiful day, like LA. It was like people were just kind of doing their thing. And sure, when the goals happened, they were freaking out. But
I don't know about that.
dude, I'm telling you,
That's a Homer thing, I think. And what I will say is that I think you're correct in saying that there's nothing that you could do, period, in LAFC Stadium to match what was at the Mercedes-Benz and 72,000 sold out loud, right? That was crazy, right? But I think that crowd at LAFC was every bit as fired up as what was going on at Benz. Okay. It's just that the crowd size was only 30,000.
So talking to a few friends about that 2018, and this is why we do the podcast. We want to feel that again. It's amazing. Very sad right now. Have we lost hope that we can ever replicate what happened in 2018 as Atlanta United fans? Or at best, are we hoping to get to 75% of what that evening represented in the MLS Cup final at Atlanta United? Do you think that that's possible?
Yeah. There's two sides to that answer, right? One is you say, look, we have definitely started to slip off in terms of attendance and atmosphere and everything. You worry, will we get that back on a routine basis? I don't know. But at the flip side of that is, despite the fact that we've been pretty awful on the field, we still have a really good turnout. Yeah. The crowds have been high, numbers have been high. So I think you can see that glass half full or glass half empty. And I don't know the answer. You won't know the answer until we either do get better or we don't. If we get better, you'll find out whether or not we lost a little bit of that mojo or not.
Yeah, given the trajectory we've been on, particularly the last 2.5 years, that graph is going down. And I don't see it going up. I don't see any signals that it's going up. Do you?
Well, you need a team. As a New York Mets fan, what I'll say is the Mets, were terrible after, they won the World Series in '86, and they were terrible all the way for like 15 years. But they got back into.
Don't bring up the Mets.
They got back into the National League final.
Use the Braves as an example.
No, but what I was going to say is that the reason why I was going to use this example is when the Mets finally got into the playoffs again, for the first time in like 15 years or whatever. So the stadium, this was the old Shea Stadium. It held like 70,000, 67,000. You know how many ticket people went in the lottery?
Don't know.
6 million.
Wow.
So people said that fan base was dead.
Yeah.
It wasn't so dead. They could have sold out that stadium how many times? So, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Atlanta fans, we're usually fair weather, but I feel like we come for Atlanta United. So if you get us a team, I feel like the energy will come back.
If you build it, they will come.
Yes.
I need that, Carmen. I need to know that the energy can come back. I think it will.
Yeah.
I think that, that same group that, doesn't have another soccer team that lives here in Atlanta, you bring the talent on the field, you get results. If you win, we will come. But, I think if we keep losing, people are going to stop coming. To some degree. It's going to keep trickling off.
Never, Mikey Dobbs. We'll still be there.
We'll still be there.
Drinking our Wild Heaven beers.
Damn straight. So, Dave, what else?
I got one other stat from the final that they brought up that just astonished me. And I think we've talked a lot about on the podcast about, this individual. So the goalkeeper for Philadelphia Union, Andre Blake, who is not just the best goalkeeper in the MLS by far. To me is certainly a top 10 goalkeeper in the world.
You thought Philly had it locked after he made that first save?
Well, no, but I'm not even going to go to that. What I'm going to say is that one of the things I realized, we were talking about coaching, and I'm like, Curtin has this crazy system, and you're like, their defense has been so terrific. I'm actually, now that I heard this stat and I know thinking about it more, not actually sure Curtin and the Philadelphia Union defense is so great. It might just be Andre Blake. You know how many? Here's a guess. Here's a trivia question of the day.
Why isn't he on the roster for the U.S. men's
Because
national
he's
team?
Jamaican.
Oh,
Actually.
I know.
I forgot about that. I knew that. Sorry, that was a brain fart.
Can't we
but-
buy him or something?
No, I know, right? I mean,
We could naturalize him. Honestly. No, but he's already played for them.
Yeah.
So you can't do that.
Oh.
Anyway,
there's no rules anymore about that shit.
yes, there is.
No, there's not. We could naturalize him. She's right.
No, you cannot.
'Cause
So,
he's played.
so you
I don't know
can-
if you know, but this whole thing's run by FIFA. If you give them money,
maybe.
we can
is
get
true.
Blake.
So just so that we don't confuse people, the actual rule is FIFA is totally agnostic. You can do anything you want. You can naturalize somebody by saying you are a citizen. You know, if the president says you're a citizen and they want to accept it, that's fine. But, and here's the big but, and I actually think it's the only dang thing that FIFA's gotten right, certainly in the last 30 years. They said that once you play a full international for any given team, you cannot switch countries. So that you cannot show up for the World Cup in one team and show up for the next World Cup in another team and show up for the third World Cup in a third team.
Yeah.
You can't be a mercenary, and I like that.
Yep.
I'm fine with anybody could be anywhere.
Yeah. Pick your color. So.
Yeah. All right, here's a trivia question.
Okay.
How many set piece goals has Andre Blake given up in the 6 years that he's been at Philadelphia Union?
So this counts corner kicks, and
I don't think it's corner kicks. I think it's just free kicks.
okay.
I don't think
So, but I just want to clarify that
Yeah.
because that's a set piece.
So it's
So
direct, or if they serve it in from a free kick and somebody heads it in or whatever.
right.
right,
So
any
so
free kick.
so it's of any free kick on the field, no throw-ins and no corner
Yes.
kicks. Okay.
Last 6 years,
It's
that he's
technically
been there.
technically a throw-in and corner kick are set pieces, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. In the last 6 years, how many
years.
goals has he given up?
First, as a corollary,
Wow.
we say, how many has Rios Novo given up?
Yeah, right.
I'm just even thinking of the one where he was standing on the wrong side.
6 years. Oh, man, I mean, I feel like it's obviously got to be a good stat, right? So if he's only giving up one goal a season on set pieces, that would be like insane, right?
It would be.
That would be insane.
So 6 is my answer.
The answer is 4.
That's
It was
double
ridic-
insane.
I remember
Right?
them saying that.
I
when
fell
was
off my
watching.
chair.
Right? I mean,
Yes.
6 would have been a fall off your chair number, right?
Right.
So
4.
I thought they were
4.
going to say that this season, and when they were
For the season, I would have been in
right,
you
right.
even set me up to give you a silly number.
Yeah.
And there
It's
we
a
go.
ridiculous number.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, that guy is a ridiculous goalkeeper. And he probably, honestly, he probably saves a goal a game at least that another goalkeeper,
How
an
is
average
he not in
goalkeeper wouldn't
Europe?
say.
How is he not in Europe?
I don't know. Why
That's
is
a
he
great
still at
question.
Philadelphia Union? He's a top, in my opinion, a
That's a
top
great
10
question.
goalkeeper in the world. The only people I would have him behind is, the Edersons and the Allisons of the world.
Yeah.
And honestly, shot stopping wise, he's probably better than those guys.
Yeah.
I mean, he's amazing, that guy. And he just does it all the time. He never gives up goals, right? And I know he gave up 3 goals in the final, but he.
I mean, those were pretty hard to put on him.
Oh yeah, they were
Yeah.
ridiculous.
I mean, Gareth Bale from point blank. I mean,
and he got a hand to that one. Did you see
yeah.
that?
I mean, yeah.
I mean, he was going left. Gareth Bale has it in the upper 90. He goes backwards, and he got a hand to
Almost
that. He
got
almost
there.
saved
Almost
that,
got there.
which would have been, good God.
yeah.
Anyway, so it's something that I've never considered because usually I think the goalkeeper, in terms of impact on the field, is pretty low, right? So every time you always talk about, the stat in baseball is wins above a replacement, right? So if you take the average in that league, the average goalkeeper in MLS, and you just replace it, what would it be? And usually you think it might be a goal in a season. It's not much, right? But Blake is probably, he's probably good for. It wouldn't surprise me if truly he was something like 12 or 15 goals over the average. I mean,
I would say that.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, it is ridiculous. And if you take that off of Philadelphia Union is suddenly an average team. Maybe I think they're still a playoff team, but barely.
Amazing. That is an amazing stat.
He's
incredible.
He's a god between the posts. I mean, holy cannoli.
So, Dave, anything to circle back on World Cup, U.S. men's national team, MLS Cup final?
The MLS Cup final, I have to say, was pure joy for me. I mean, it shows you where the league has come, that as a neutral, you can tune in and see two teams playing quality football, attractive, an epic game, an absolutely epic game with drama, the whole thing. And despite the injury and the long stoppage for that or whatever, there wasn't a lot of shenanigans in the final. There weren't people going down us super unnecessarily. It was a pretty well played game. It was drama. The stands were nuts. I mean, it was everything you'd want to see. I mean, to me, the next step in terms of when you will say that MLS has made it is, will neutrals turn out to see MLS Cup final? Because, unlike basketball, it's got a 7-game series, and baseball is a 7-game series. Super Bowl is 1 game, and lots of people tune into it no matter what, right? Mm-hmm. MLS Cup final is 1 game also, and World Cup, everybody tunes into. The average, even American now, watches the World Cup, right? So the World Cup final. So the question is, how far will MLS final go, where literally will neutrals tune into it? And if they keep doing that.
Yeah, and well, look, I think that's part of MLS's strategy to get teams in every major market across the U.S. So while it's hard for us to care about what's going on at Columbus Crew, or same way you are with the NFL, the players on Columbus Crew or Philadelphia Union. I think in 4 years, I think you and I, who are obviously on the far end of doing a podcast on Atlanta United and MLS, we struggle to know many of the names on almost any
For sure.
Other MLS team, right? But I'm curious where that will be in our minds. As trendsetters to follow the league 4 years from now, when again U.S. will be playing in the World Cup on our home turf, or in North America anyway.
Yep.
I think there's a lot to be optimistic about.
And I
MLS.
do think people are going to get excited for the Leagues Cup.
I think that is a sleeper.
It is a total sleeper right now out there.
It's a sleeper.
People
for sure.
are going to be people have no idea that it exists.
Yeah, no one does. I think it's such a smart move between Liga MX, who is a league that needs as much exposure as possible right now. They're on the decline. MLS is on the up. So that's a win-win.
I mean, if you think about the Gold Cup, which is the CONCACAF, championship for national teams, which is a pretty poor tournament. It's basically us and Mexico every time, right? That final, at least amongst American soccer fans, has become a big deal, right? Most people tune into it, even though it's for nothing, right? It's it's the Gold Cup, right? But, the League Cup is that times 1,000, because every game is between two good teams. It's not worthless.
It's going to be really interesting.
So I think that's going to be, and you got to figure the final for that's going to be bigger than the Gold Cup for sure.
So I think we've talked about it all, Dave.
I think we have.
And hopefully, in between now and, I don't know, maybe one of the U.S. men's national team games, we're talking to Sam Stokes, who does a podcast on Yank Report. He does a lot of conversation on the U.S. men's national team as well.
Yeah.
At least nice enough in the Twitter handle to say he may come on as a guest. So we just need to coordinate some dates, and hopefully
I like it.
Either in our next podcast or an upcoming podcast, we'll get him on and get his take on the U.S. men's national team and wherever we are at that stage. So stay tuned, people.
Take care.
All right. Thanks.
Bye. Speaking of which, have you contacted our wine sponsor?
No, I will though.
Yeah,
So-
don't forget to do that.
No, I mean Brandon.
First, regardless of that,
Brandon will do it, no doubt.
first of all, regardless of that, road trip, aren't the three of us going up to the winery?
Absolutely.
We could just show up and be like, I heard you're a
Beer
sponsor.
sponsor.
Is it okay for me to stop streaming?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Beer sponsor and wine sponsor? Absolutely. Especially since I'm putting Brandon on the line to be a sponsor live on the
Yeah.
YouTube.
Oops.
Oops. Sorry, Brandon. You're on the hook.
You're streaming.